Michael Jordan eased his Rolls-Royce Phantom into a secluded corner of the parking lot at Prestige Autos, the high-end car dealership he'd recently acquired in the heart of Atlanta, Georgia. The August sun blazed down, making the luxury cars in the lot gleam like polished gems. He deliberately parked far from the VIP spots near the entrance, letting the Rolls-Royce blend into the shade of a few trees, unnoticed by passers-by. Michael didn't want attention. Today, he wasn't the basketball legend or the billionaire behind Air Jordan. He was just a guy in a faded gray hoodie, worn jeans, and scuffed sneakers, here to see how his staff treated someone who didn't look like they belonged. He stepped out, pulling his baseball cap low to shadow his face. His sharp eyes scanned the sleek facade of Prestige Autos, its massive glass windows reflecting the sunlight. Through the glass, he spotted a cluster of employees near the front desk, their laughter and chatter faintly audible. Michael took a deep breath and walked across the lot, his sneakers scuffing lightly on the hot pavement. As he pushed open the showroom door, cool air hit him, a stark contrast to the Georgia heat. The scent of fresh leather and wax hung in the air, mingling with the glow of pristine cars under bright overhead lights. Sedans, SUVs, and sporty coupes lined up like works of art, their glossy finishes catching every glint. But the moment Michael stepped inside, the employees' chatter quieted. He felt their eyes flick over him, his hoodie, his jeans, his sneakers. The looks didn't need words. Michael knew their meaning. He'd faced them his whole life, from Brooklyn courts to boardrooms. But today, he wasn't here to react. He was here to watch. From across the showroom, a woman approached. Emily Carter, the dealership manager, moved with authority. Her tailored black blazer, polished heels, and clipboard tucked under her arm screamed control. Her sharp features matched her sharper gaze, and her smile, though polite, felt thin, like it could crack under pressure. She stopped in front of Michael, sizing him up from cap to shoes. "Hello, sir," Emily said, her voice cool but edged with suspicion. "Can I help you with something today?" Michael smiled, keeping his tone easy. Just looking around, he gestured vaguely toward the cars, playing the part of a curious browser. Emily's eyes narrowed, lingering on his hoodie and sneakers. Her smile tightened, barely holding its politeness. "Are you shopping for a car?" she asked, her tone carrying a hint of doubt. Michael nodded, still smiling. "Something like that." Emily's lips pursed, her gaze turning colder. "We cater to a very specific clientele here," she said, her voice taking on an edge. "Most of our inventory requires pre-qualification. Perhaps I can suggest—" Before she could finish, another employee called out from across the room. "Hey, Emily, delivery guy's here." Emily's head turned briefly, but her eyes snapped back to Michael, like she was making sure he didn't wander off. Michael raised an eyebrow, his voice still light. "You assuming I'm not qualified?" The question caught her off guard, but only for a moment. She straightened, regaining her composure. "I'm just trying to save you some time," she said, her smile forced. "These vehicles start at 6 figures. Maybe I can direct you to—" Michael's expression stayed steady, though he noted her words, each one laced with judgment. The sting of her assumptions wasn't new, but it still pricked. He glanced around the showroom, pretending to admire a sleek silver coupe nearby. His fingers brushed the door handle, and he looked back at Emily. "Nice car," he said simply. Her brows furrowed, her smile tightening further. "It is," she replied, "but if you're serious about an inquiry, we can set up an appointment. For now, I'll have to ask you not to touch the vehicles." Michael paused, considering her words. then stepped back from the car. He nodded once, hands in his pockets, and gestured for her to go on. "All right, let's hear it. What would you recommend for someone like me?" Emily blinked, caught off guard by his directness. But before she could respond, Michael added, his tone still light but pointed, "If you think you know what I need, I'm all ears." Her polite facade cracked, revealing a flash of impatience. Maybe something a bit more budget-friendly, she said, her voice dropping as if sharing a secret. "I can give you directions to a dealership that specializes in pre-owned vehicles." Michael's smile faded, not reaching his eyes. He'd seen enough. "That's quite an assumption," he said softly, his words hanging in the air. Emily faltered for a split second, but quickly recovered, straightening her shoulders. "I'll be back with a list of options," she said briskly, walking away, clutching her clipboard like a shield. Michael watched her go, his expression unreadable. He turned back to the silver coupe, his reflection staring back from its glossy surface. This was going to be an interesting day. Michael stood in the center of the showroom, hands in his pockets, his gaze drifting over the lineup of cars. He wasn't one to jump to conclusions, but Emily's dismissive attitude was hard to ignore. Around him, the staff resumed their conversations, though he caught occasional glances in his direction subtle, judging looks he'd grown used to over the years. Emily returned moments later, her clipboard gripped tightly. Her brisk stride and forced smile betrayed her annoyance. "All right," she said, stopping a few feet from him. "I've compiled a few options that might be more suitable for your situation." Michael tilted his head slightly. "My situation?" Emily nodded, her tone clipped. She handed him a printout of pre-owned vehicles, used sedans, older SUVs, a compact hybrid, all priced well below the dealership's usual offerings. "These are more accessible models," she said, "reliable, economical, and practical." Michael took the list without a word, his eyes scanning the page. His lips twitched in faint amusement, but he hid it, folding the paper and tucking it into his pocket. "Appreciate the effort," he said, his voice even. Emily seemed briefly disarmed by his calm response, but quickly recovered, her hands resting on her hips. "Look," she said, her voice dropping as if sharing a secret. "I'm just trying to be realistic. Prestige Autos isn't for everyone. I don't want to waste your time." Michael met her gaze, his expression calm but unwavering. "And what exactly makes you think I'm not your target customer?" Emily hesitated. Just for a moment. "I've been doing this a long time," she said, her tone hardening. "I can tell when someone's out of their depth." "Out of my depth," Michael repeated, his voice neutral, almost thoughtful. "Interesting." A flicker of uncertainty crossed Emily's eyes, but she pressed on. "I'm just being honest. It's better to be upfront than to have someone leave disappointed." Michael let out a soft chuckle, shaking his head slightly. "Honest? Huh, I like honesty. How about this, you let me speak to the owner? Think we can make that happen?" Emily's eyebrows shot up, her composure slipping. "The owner," she echoed, her voice rising slightly. "That's not possible today. The owner doesn't just drop by for casual visits. They're a busy person." "I'm sure they are," Michael said, nodding slightly. "But maybe you could give them a call. Let them know I'm here. I think they'd want to meet me." Emily's smile tightened, her patience visibly thinning. "Look, sir," she said, her voice now tinged with frustration. "I'm trying to be as polite as possible, but this is getting ridiculous. I have other customers to attend to. If you're serious about buying a car, we can schedule a meeting with a sales consultant. Otherwise?" "Otherwise," what Michael asked, his tone still calm but carrying an unmistakable edge. Emily's eyes narrowed, her frustration bubbling over. "Otherwise? I'm going to have to ask you to leave." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Michael stood still, his gaze locked on hers. The entire showroom seemed to hold its breath. Michael stood motionless, his eyes locked on Emily. The air in the Prestige Autos showroom thick with tension. Her demand for him to leave hung like a sharp blade, cutting through the silence. The other employees stopped their chatter, their glances darting toward the standoff, sensing something big was about to unfold. Emily stood with her arms crossed, chin slightly raised, as if she'd regained control. But Michael didn't flinch. He reached into his hoodie pocket, pulling out his phone with deliberate calm, his fingers gliding across the screen. "All right," he said, his voice steady but carrying a weight that made Emily pause. "I'll make the call myself." Emily blinked, her brow furrowing in confusion. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice betraying a slight tremor. Michael didn't answer immediately. He raised the phone to his ear, turning slightly away from her probing stare. "Hey, David," he said, his tone casual. "I'm at the dealership. Just a little misunderstanding. Can you let them know I'm here?" He ended the call, slipping the phone back into his pocket, and turned to face Emily. A faint smile tugged at his lips. "They'll be here shortly," he said, his voice almost too calm. Emily opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her confidence wavered, her eyes flickering between Michael and the other employees, who now watched with bated breath. The showroom felt like a pressure cooker, every second stretching as if something was about to explode. Minutes later, the main doors swung open. A man in a crisp navy suit strode in, his polished shoes clicking softly on the marble floor. David Hayes, the regional director of Prestige Autos, carried a warm but authoritative smile. His eyes found Michael instantly, and his grin widened. "Mr. Jordan," David called, crossing the room quickly, hand extended. "Great to see you." The showroom froze. Emily's clipboard nearly slipped from her grasp, her face paling as her eyes darted between Michael and David. Whispers rippled among the staff, some exchanging shocked looks, others trying to piece together what was happening. Michael shook David's hand, his faint smile unwavering. "Thanks for coming." "David," Michael said, his voice low but clear. David turned to Emily, his smile fading into a professional edge. "Emily, I see you've met Mr. Jordan, but it seems you didn't know who he is." Emily stammered, her voice barely audible. "Mr. Jordan," she repeated, as if testing the words. David nodded, his tone sharp. "Mr. Michael Jordan, the new owner of Prestige Autos." The room went dead silent. Emily stood frozen, clutching her clipboard like a lifeline, her face ashen. The other employees exchanged glances, some whispering, others staring in disbelief. Michael stood there, hands in his pockets, his calm gaze sweeping the room, taking in every reaction. David looked at Emily, his voice carrying a hint of disappointment. "I trust this wasn't the welcome we'd want for our new owner." Emily shook her head, scrambling for words. I didn't know." She stuttered. "I didn't realize. I just thought what Michael cut in, his voice soft but cutting like a blade. He stepped closer, his eyes locked on hers. "That I didn't belong here. That someone like me couldn't afford a car in this place or deserve respect." Emily's face flushed, her composure crumbling. Michael tilted his head, his voice dropping but heavy with intent. "You looked at me, saw a guy in a hoodie and old sneakers. And what did you think? Emily, who did you think I was?" The question hit like a punch. Emily lowered her eyes, unable to respond. I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Michael shook his head, his gaze unwavering. "Sorry doesn't cut it. Emily, you judged me, not just me. Probably plenty of others who walk through that door, and I want to know why. David folded his arms, stepping back to let Michael take the lead. The other employees stood frozen, not daring to speak. Emily tried to steady herself, but her voice trembled. I thought you weren't our usual customer. I was trying to make sure of what Michael interrupted, his tone sharper now. Make sure people like me don't waste your time, or make sure only the right kind of people get welcomed here. Emily opened her mouth but found no words. Michael stepped closer, his voice low but piercing. You know, I've dealt with looks like yours my whole life. Looks that say I don't belong, that I'm out of place because of how I look or the color of my skin. I fought through that to stand here as the owner of this place. But that doesn't mean I'll let you keep doing it to anyone else. His words landed like a thunderclap, not just on Emily, but on everyone in the room. Some employees shifted uncomfortably, avoiding his gaze. A young staff member near the front desk muttered something to a colleague, but quickly fell silent when Michael's eyes flicked his way. David broke the silence, his voice firm. Mr. Jordan, I'm sorry for this experience. This isn't how we want Prestige Autos represented. Michael raised a hand, stopping him. It's fine. David, I didn't come here to point fingers. I came to see what I'm working with. And today showed me a lot about the culture here. He turned back to Emily, his voice steady but commanding. You got anything else to say? Emily, now's your chance. Emily took a shaky breath, trying to regain her footing. I messed up, she admitted, her cheeks burning. I didn't know who you were. I was just doing my job. Michael's eyes narrowed. Your job? Or pushing people like me out because you decided we don't fit your idea of who belongs here? His words cut deep, exposing a truth Emily couldn't dodge. She lowered her head, her hands trembling around her clipboard. I didn't mean it like that, she whispered. I wasn't trying to discriminate. But you did, Michael said, his voice calm but unyielding. You saw a black man in casual clothes and decided I wasn't worth your time. That's not just a mistake. Emily, that's a problem we're going to fix. He turned to David, his tone shifting to one of authority. David, get everyone into the conference room. I want to talk to the whole team. Now. David nodded immediately. Understood. Mr. Jordan. He turned to the staff, his voice sharp. Everyone, conference room, right now. The employees began to move, their footsteps echoing in the quiet showroom. Emily stood rooted, her face pale, clutching her clipboard like it could shield her. Michael gave her one last look, his eyes firm but not cruel. Come on, Emily, he said. You need to hear this too. The glass-walled conference room filled quickly, the air heavy with anticipation. Employees took their seats, some stealing glances at Michael, others keeping their heads down. Emily sat near the back, her usual confidence replaced by nervous stillness. David stood by the door, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Michael took his place at the head of the table, his hands in his pockets, his presence commanding every eye in the room. He cleared his throat, his voice steady and resonant. Thank you all for being here on short notice. My name is Michael Jordan, and I'm the new owner of Prestige Autos. Murmurs of surprise rippled through the room, some employees exchanging looks of curiosity or embarrassment. Emily sank lower in her chair, avoiding eye contact. Michael let the moment settle before continuing. I came here today dressed like this for a reason. I wanted to see how this dealership runs when no one knows who I am. I wanted to feel what a customer feels walking through those doors. And what I felt today was disappointing. He paused, his gaze sweeping the group. I was judged not for what I could bring, but for how I looked. And that's not just about me. It's about every person who walks into this place, every customer who doesn't fit someone's idea of what a luxury car buyer should be. A young salesman, Jake, hesitantly raised his hand. Michael nodded at him. Go ahead. Mr. Jordan, Jake began, his voice shaky. I think most of us try to treat customers fairly, but sometimes it's hard not to make assumptions. Michael nodded, his expression thoughtful. I get that. We all have biases. But here's the thing, it's not enough to just try. You have to challenge those biases. You have to create a space where everyone feels respected, no matter their appearance or background. He paused, letting his words sink in, then turned his gaze to Emily. Emily, I gave you a chance to speak. Anything you want to add? All eyes turned to her. She hesitated, her voice barely audible. I made a mistake, she admitted, her cheeks flushed. I misjudged you, and I'm truly sorry. Michael nodded, his expression unreadable. Thank you for saying that. I hope this is a wake-up call not just for you, but for everyone here. Because change starts with accountability. He looked back at the group, his voice firm. From now on, we're building a new culture here, one based on respect, inclusivity, and fairness. If anyone has a problem with that, speak up now. The room stayed silent, the weight of his words pressing down on everyone. But in Emily's eyes, a flicker of defiance lingered, unnoticed by most, but not by Michael. Michael Jordan stood at the head of the conference room table, his piercing gaze sweeping over the employees of Prestige Autos. His challenge hung in the air, a line drawn between the dealership's past and the future he envisioned. Emily Carter sat in the corner, clutching her clipboard, her eyes flickering between remorse and a faint trace of defiance. David Hayes, the regional director, stood near the door, his arms crossed, watching the room with a stern expression. The staff sat in silence, waiting for Michael's next words. He took a deep breath, his voice steady and commanding. I'm not here to single anyone out. But what happened today isn't just one mistake, it's a symptom of a bigger problem. A problem about how we see people, how we treat them based on appearances or assumptions. That ends now. He paced slowly around the table, his eyes locking on to each employee, driving his point home. Starting today, we're changing how things work here. I'm bringing in new training programs not just about selling cars, but about respecting people. Every customer who walks through those doors deserves the same treatment, no matter what they wear, where they're from, or the color of their skin. If anyone can't get on board with that, the door's right there. A few employees nodded, their eyes showing agreement. Emily remained still, her head lowered, as if trying to shrink into her chair. Michael caught the defiance in her posture but pressed on. He turned to David, his tone firm. David, I want you to oversee these programs. I expect weekly reports on progress. If anyone's not keeping up, I need to know immediately. David nodded sharply. Understood, Mr. Jordan. I'll make it happen. Michael scanned the room again, his voice softening but still resolute. I believe in second chances, but those chances come with accountability. You're not just working for me. You're representing a new standard for Prestige Autos. Don't let me down. The meeting ended, and the employees filed out, their footsteps echoing in the tense silence. Michael lingered, exchanging a few words with David about the training plans. But as he stepped out of the conference room, he noticed Emily hadn't left. She stood near the door, her eyes hesitant, as if wrestling with something. Michael paused, looking at her. Got something to say. Emily. She took a shaky breath, her voice low. Mr. Jordan, I'm truly sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. I've been here for years, and sometimes I just try to do my job the best I can." Michael tilted his head, his gaze unwavering. "Your job, or your version of it, based on the assumptions you make about people." Emily opened her mouth but found no words. Michael stepped closer, his voice low but sharp. "You know, Emily, I've dealt with looks like yours since I was a kid. Looks that say I don't belong, that I'm not good enough because of my skin or how I present myself. I fought through those to stand here, but that doesn't mean I'll let you keep doing it to others." Emily lowered her head, her hands trembling around her clipboard. "I understand," she whispered, barely audible. "I'll do better." Michael studied her for a moment, then nodded slightly. "I hope so, because if you don't, you won't have a place here." He turned and walked out of the showroom, needing the fresh air to clear his mind. But deep down, he knew this wasn't over. The next day, Michael returned to Prestige Autos, this time without the disguise. He stepped out of his Rolls-Royce Phantom, now parked boldly in front of the main entrance, the sunlight glinting off its sleek surface, dressed in a sharp black suit, his polished shoes clicking on the pavement. He carried an air of undeniable authority. The employees recognized him instantly, some offering quick nods, others stealing glances with newfound respect. But Michael wasn't here to bask in recognition. He was here to ensure his words became reality. David greeted him at the door, his smile professional. "Mr. Jordan, we've started outlining the training program. I've assigned a team to oversee it, and we're ready to move forward." Michael nodded, his eyes scanning the showroom. "Good. But I'm not interested in plans, I want results. And I want to see Emily." David hesitated briefly, then nodded. "She's in the back office. I'll get her." When Emily emerged, she looked different still in her crisp blazer, but her eyes betrayed a nervous edge. She approached Michael, trying to muster confidence. "Mr. Jordan," she said softly, "I've been thinking about what you said. I want to prove I can change." Michael's gaze was unrelenting. "I've heard promises before. Emily, words don't mean much without action. Today, I'm watching you work. Show me you've learned something." Emily nodded, her eyes showing determination, but Michael caught a flicker of hesitation. He said nothing more, gesturing for her to get back to work. Over the next few hours, Michael stood in a corner of the showroom, observing Emily's interactions. She greeted a well-dressed, middle-aged couple with a warm smile, her tone professional as she walked them through a sedan's features. But when a young man in a t-shirt and jeans walked in, Michael noticed a shift. Emily's smile stiffened, her eyes flicking over his casual clothes, and her voice took on a dismissive edge. "We carry high-end models here," she said, her tone clipped. "Maybe you'd be more comfortable with something more affordable." Michael's jaw tightened, his eyes darkening. He stepped forward, his voice low but firm. "Emily, what are you doing?" Emily spun around, her face flushing. I was just helping him find something suitable," she stammered. Michael's gaze bored into her. "Suitable? Or are you judging him the same way you judged me?" The young man, a black customer, stood there, his expression calm but firm. "I came here for the new SUV. He said, I can afford it, but it seems like she doesn't think so." Emily opened her mouth, but no words came. Michael turned to the customer, his tone softening. "I'm sorry for this. I'm Michael Jordan, the owner. You're welcome to look at any car here, and I'll make sure you're treated right." The customer nodded, a small smile breaking through. "Appreciate that. Mr. Jordan, I just want a fair shot." Michael turned back to Emily, his voice now ice cold. "You had your chance, Emily, but you didn't learn a thing." Emily's eyes widened, her voice desperate. "I didn't mean it, I was just—" Michael raised a hand, cutting her off. "Enough. You didn't just disrespect me, you disrespected this customer. That's not acceptable here." He turned to David, who had been watching nearby, his expression grim. "David, I want Emily out of Prestige Autos. Effective immediately." Emily gasped, her hands shaking. "Mr. Jordan, please, I need this job. I'll change. I swear." Michael's gaze didn't waver. "You had your shot, Emily. You chose to hold on to your biases. This isn't the place for that." David stepped forward, his voice calm but final. "Emily, pack your things. I'll handle the paperwork." Emily stood frozen, her eyes brimming with panic, but no one spoke up for her. The other employees looked away, some with guilt, others with respect for Michael's resolve. Emily turned slowly, her footsteps heavy, as she walked to the back office, her clipboard falling to the floor with a dull thud. Michael turned to the young customer, a genuine smile returning. "Let's take a look at that SUV. I'll walk you through it myself." The customer grinned, his posture relaxing. "Thanks, Mr. Jordan. That means a lot." In the days that followed, word of the changes at Prestige Autos spread fast. Michael oversaw the rollout of the new training programs, emphasizing respect and fairness. The staff began to shift, treating every customer with professionalism, regardless of appearance or background. A week later, Michael returned to the dealership, this time to meet a new group of clients. He noticed Jake, the young salesman who'd spoken up in the meeting, assisting an older customer in work clothes, patiently explaining the features of a luxury sedan without a hint of judgment. Michael smiled, a sense of satisfaction settling in. The road to change at Prestige Autos was just beginning, but the first steps were solid. He stepped outside, the sunlight catching his Rolls Royce, and for the first time, he felt he wasn't just running a dealership, he was building a place where respect came first.